Welcome to the 2 Month Review, the weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter at the University of Rochester, where we take a book, a giant one, a big one, an intimidating one, or sometimes several books all at once, and break it down bit by bit, talk about it, have jokes, analyze, do a lot of stuff. We are in season 26, and we are reading Doris Lessing's The Golden Notebook. This is the penultimate episode in which we go up to the section called The Golden Notebook on page 581 in the printed version of this. I am Chad Post from Open Letter Books, joined as always by Kaija Straumanis, editor at Open Letter Books, translator from the Latvian, uh, co-host of this podcast. I don't know what else. How are you doing today, Kaya?
And soon to be riding mower mechanic.
Uh-huh.
I've watched enough YouTube videos. I am doing well, Chad. How are you?
I'm okay. I am going to Poland tomorrow. We are filming this early um, uh, because of that. So I'll be in Poland for a week for an editor's trip with 16 other people from around the world. One other American who's from Columbia University Press. So should be a pretty interesting trip, but a little nervous about going overseas. Seems like things aren't super settled here in America right now, I guess.
A bit of unrest, just a tiny bit.
I've been trying to get a Waymo all day and I can't even get one. I can't even light it on fire. Get a ride. Whatever.
They're all
Anyway,
booked. They're all booked.
they're all booked up. They're all out of service for some reason. I don't know what's going on. That's okay. Anyway, so we're going to talk about this last section leading up to the Golden Notebook, where I think like obviously next week as we close this out, we're going to have a lot more to say about everything and about the shape of the book as a whole. We do get for Free Women Part 4 in this section, and then we do get the notebooks, but they all end. Essentially, all the notebooks come to a conclusion here. So this is the wrapping up of the four notebooks that Anna has been writing. It also is a not it's the there's one more free women section, but this is a free women section in which Tommy has gotten married. We've jumped ahead a little bit in time, um, and things are sort of like not wrapping up, I guess. I don't know what to say about it. Anyways, what did you think of this particular section? I guess we should start with Free Women 4 specifically. And that is for anyone listening for the first time or needs a recap, the Free Women sections are the ones with Anna and Molly, Molly's son Tommy, her ex-husband, whose name is Richard, Richard's wife Marion, and Ivor, the boarder at Anna's house, along with Anna's daughter Julia. All these people come into play in this particular section. And this is the one that is the most we have determined to be the most grounded, the most like of the present moment, whereas the notebooks are sort of filling in bits and pieces of the past, which we'll get into. So this is the constructed narrative of Anna's current life.
Yes.
What you
Um,
think?
I I really liked it. In contrast to the section from last week, I did not have a hard time following along with this one. Or not a hard time following along, but I did not find myself having to go back and reread, like the sections with Mother Sugar, because those are very psychoanalytical. Um, but also a lot of superficial anxiety because this is, like you said, the notebooks are ending, and I saw this as a lot of kind of like a turning inside out of Anna. She has these four different notebooks that she's working through, and then I feel like we see the kind of struggle with those four different notebooks, which I wouldn't call them personalities, but the four different parts of her, let's call them, coming out into the open, particularly in her interactions with the American who comes to let her upper room.
So Saul, we'll get to Saul Green,
Mhm.
which is a pretty I don't know, telling sort of name.
Yeah. I also do think you said in the opening, I do think it's kind of it is indicative of wrapping things up, and that's kind of what we were talking about at the end of last week's episode was where we thought it was going to go. And I don't know how you feel, but tell me how you feel. I don't think it's being wrapped up neatly necessarily, but I think it is sort of heading in that direction. Also, the time jump where all of a sudden it's like Tommy's wife is like, what the fuck? Where are we?
Yeah, so Tommy's right, but Tommy might be only like a year older. Like we may have only skipped a few years within
Yeah,
this whole time. I mean, he was like 21 last time that we saw him. He could be 22, 23. That's
yeah,
not unusual in 1960 or 57 or wherever this is, 58, 59 at this point. Like at that point in time, to be married at like 23, not unusual. So I don't
yeah,
think it's a huge time jump, to be honest. And I thought there was somewhere in this part that did lay out a bunch of years. And I was like, oh, this is kind of the years we've been
yeah,
following, but it's not been
yeah,
so completely baldly stated like that. But yeah,
yeah,
in terms of like wrapping up though, like I was thinking like this section, this penultimate episode or I guess penultimate section, if you want to look at it like that, is starting to move towards some sort of resolution, but it does not come to like we're still left. This is like a cliffhanger. Like she's about to start we're jumping ahead at the end of this, at the end of the fourth notebook, she has bought a golden notebook and that is about to be started. So we're like everything else has kind of fallen away, and that is going to be our like I would think sort of grand statement or like kind of the summary, the whatever of it. I would say that in this section of anything, similar to what we said last week, does it if it was going to wrap up or fall apart, this is like an argument for it totally falling apart. I had added the Sonic Youth song Schizophrenia to the opening and ending intro outro of our podcast last week, and this feels like fucking schizophrenia. Like I was already like leaning in that way, but
oh,
this one's
absolutely.
really like, well, maybe that song would have been better suited to this particular episode, but here
I
we
mean,
are.
that's isn't that the implication with Saul?
Yeah, and that Saul also represents that. So Saul, like we'll get to this, but Saul's flipping through personalities constantly, like he's like a TV on where the channel changing button is taped down, and it's just like he's like this, and then 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 he's like this, and it's never consistent. And that form of like not schizophrenia, just to be clear, is not multiple personality disorder. It is a totally different thing. But the sort of like disillusion, we'll get to this again or bring it up again. But Anna talks about herself in the third person frequently, which is a sort of dissociation that's common within like schizophrenia or more so than schizophrenia. Oh my God, what's the word I'm looking for? Not borderline, but dissociative disorder. Dissociative
Yeah.
disorder seems to be more like of an apt, like 2025 sort of like psychological read on this book, where
Yeah.
you are split apart into many pieces. You cannot put them all back together. They become like a sort of distancing. Everything seems unreal. The world is like not cohering for you. Your sense of self is like very porous. Like this is very much Anna's state at the end of this particular section
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
the book, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't, it's what's interesting is that I feel like I don't know if this interaction and subsequent relationship with Saul is sort of the tipping point or breaking point, but she's never really over questioned why she has four notebooks. Like it seems to make sense to her.
Yeah.
Um, and this is, I think, the first time, we're in the 500s of this book now in page count, and for the first time, we're seeing her really, I don't know, not question it, but really, really look at it from a different perspective. And there's a lot of like trippy, like slipping in and out of stuff, of her like meditating, like essentially doing the fainting game without trying to faint herself. Um, and other crazy, I mean, it's a very crazy section for as straightforward as it feels style-wise. You have Marion moved in with Molly and Tommy, and that's weird, and everyone's trying to make Anna the messenger, the middleman, or like the psychoanalyst of it all. So no wonder she's fractured. Talking about
Yeah.
fragmentation, Jesus.
So yeah, so just sticking with this free women part before the notebooks. Yeah, so Marion has moved in, living upstairs, which is weird. Tommy is married. Anna, one of the things that's very clear that we had not ever said before, but is that I mean she gets rid of Ivor out of the house, kicks him out, and we'll come to that in a second. But that she's constantly like everyone, her and Molly are both like they're surrounded by people. There is no room of our own. We never
Yeah,
mentioned the phrase room of our own. However, that's been one of the things throughout this, like when she gets rid of Ivor's boyfriend, whose name I'm blanking out on, but
I think it's
like
Ronnie.
Ronnie, that and who comes back in this and is still
Yeah.
there, and then she kicks them both out essentially. But
Mhm.
they the whole idea of like that has no space. Like there's no space provided for her in the world or for her own activity, short of maybe this desk that she has with these four notebooks. But there are people constantly around her, and there are people constantly asking
Yeah.
things from her. So
Yep.
Molly, Tommy, Marion, Richard, they're all leaning on her in one way or another and are asking her to like provide something which just further like impedes the idea of like having your own particular space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know I'm jumping because it's sort of all like flowed together for me, jumping forward to Saul, but that's the same situation of people asking things of her, even something so simple as she just buys herself this new notebook and she's aware of how ready she's like she hates how ready she was to give it to Saul when he was just kind of joking and like, oh, maybe I'll take it. And it's exhausting. And I don't know if it's my favorite line of the week necessarily, but on page 488, when she's on the phone with Molly, um, so Molly calls her and basically says, you have to talk to him. You have to talk to Tommy. You have to try to make him see sense. And this is after, so Tommy and Marion get arrested at a protest, which very timely, like
Why
didn't
is that?
really,
Why is that,
yeah,
Kaya?
what is that? Yeah. Because of the unlawful sending of the National Guard to Los Angeles. I almost said deporting the National Guard to Los Angeles. I forget the word, but
Cloying?
deploying. There you go. It's a D something. I think they should deport him out of Los Angeles. Anyway, um, and they're like Richard and Marion are both like, Anna, you have to talk to them. They got arrested at this protest. Um, And then Anna asks, well, have you tried? Like, have you tried talking to Tommy? And Molly says, that's what's so odd. I can't even try. I keep telling myself I can't go on living like a guest in my own house with Marion and Tommy taking it over. Why should I? But then something odd happens. I work myself up to go and face them. But you can't face Marion. She isn't there. And I find myself thinking, well, why not? What does it matter? Who cares? I find myself shrugging my shoulders. I come in from the theater and I sneak upstairs in my own house so as not to disturb Marion and Tommy, feeling rather guilty to be there at all. Do you understand that? And Anna says, yes. Unfortunately, I do, because this is her situation
Yeah.
with Igor and Ronnie. And Anna's like, even catches herself thinking, like, it could just be easier to just pack up Janet and just leave. Like, we can just leave the building, leave the situation, than to have any confrontation.
Yeah.
But they're always anticipating confrontation. Every single moment of Anna's being seems to be anticipating confrontation. And I cannot, it makes me exhausted for women as a woman to like like to always be anticipating something, anticipating the next move, the next situation. And she makes a reference, I think, that that's what it is to be a parent, is you always have to be thinking ahead to the future of whatever that might be. And that's exhausting. But it's exhausting just to, you know, just to be alive. It's so fucking tiresome.
Well, I think what was interesting of that conversation that you quoted from is the continuation part where Molly goes on to say, I was sitting upstairs, similar to what you just said about Anna. I was sitting upstairs quiet as a mouse, so as not to disturb Marion and Tommy, and thinking I'd simply pack a bag and wander off somewhere and leave them to it. And I thought that the generation after us are going to take one look at us and get married at 18, forbid divorces, and go in for strict moral codes and all that, because the chaos otherwise is just too terrifying. And I think that that's a good part of thesis of the book too, is that these attempts to be free women or to be free, in which they have no space of their own, they're always impeded upon in one way or another, is just led to like this chaos and this chaotic life that they're living, and that as a result, like here's something like Tommy and his people are going to be like, fuck this, let's go in the opposite way, which is always that kind of like one generation does this and the next one doesn't, tries to rebel in the other way, and then you rebel in the other way, and then you rebel in the other way, and you keep going back and forth like a pendulum sort of thing. That
Yeah.
cropping up there I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. And then I mean, 489 at the bottom of 489 describes is Anna describing the demonstration. Sorry, it's not a well, not a protest, it was a demonstration. But I like at the bottom of page 489 where it says she says, you know, no one's controlling the crowds. There's just people kind of walking and shouting slogans almost tentatively. And then the arrival of the police. And the police were hesitant and tentative too. They didn't know what to expect. So like,
Yeah, I thought the line before that I had marked, no, it was fluid, experimental. People are doing things without knowing why. A
hmm
stream of young people had flowed down the street to the headquarters like water. Is demonstration like why have we changed that to protest necessarily? Like that's interesting shift. Like
yeah,
I don't know that they are exactly the same or if their definitions are fully apart. Like the Venn diagram's pretty, there's a lot of overlap,
yeah,
I think, between your usage for them. But demonstration sounds less like we're going to go arrest and loot. These people are looting and we need to arrest them, which is the way that things are categorized now by CNN and whatnot. Of like
yeah,
these protests, the increasing violence of these protests is you're like burning a driverless car. Best fucking day
yeah,
of your life if you get to do that. Like, Jesus Christ, like, hell yeah, war on the driverless cars. Let's do this. But like,
yeah,
the idea of protest feels like more dangerous and like whatnot. Demonstration, you're demonstrating in favor of something or about something,
yeah.
which is more, I don't know, more British in
I
ways.
mean, no, that's a really good question because the way that the world focuses now on those words is the difference between a protest and a riot, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And so going from a demonstration, which by definition is demonstrative, you're demonstrating a thing, you're demonstrating an opinion, or you're demonstrating uh, you know, a cause. But protesting is that's immediately a defensive
yeah.
or offensive, depending on which side of the line you're on. That's a defensive or offensive move, as opposed to I think a demonstration is I would think is largely neutral.
That's
Like
a
I think there was the demonstration. I think it was called a demonstration for Ukraine in front of the Minnesota Capitol a couple months ago, and I think that was, at least in my memory, by the media referred to as a demonstration.
Yeah, because I think you protest an action that's taking place, but you should, if you're in Los Angeles County right now, you should be demonstrating that Trump is a piece of shit and that his policies suck. So demonstrate that that is bullshit. Also, that these fucking Waymo cars are very easy to light on fire. Let's just take it out. Take out the
I
entire force of Waymo cars. Do it. Just go.
I from the videos I kept saying yesterday that it looked like it was made of paper, so I feel like those Waymo cars are more paper than Anna's notebooks, to be honest.
Probably just a bunch of crappy Kias just ready to light.
It's
Um,
like it's like a fifth grader made a poster board vehicle for a science fair project and they just wheeled it out into the street. That thing burned in minutes.
I have not looked this up. I know they're owned by Google, so get out of here, get bent. But I don't know if they're Teslas or what their thing is, but I kind of hope they are. No shame towards Kia, who I just took shots at. But anyways, so the other thing I want to mention from this is that there is the script with where Ivor leaves. She's like, "Get out, don't come back," and then he comes back to get us up with a bunch of flowers, and she's basically like, "Of course, this is what he was going to do, and I'm going to
Yeah.
say no." And then he was like, well, I was expecting you to say no anyways, but I was going to try this and now I'm pissy about it. There's this whole, again, the scripted nature of how do these interactions work. They work in
Yeah.
this way. You do X, I do Y, you do Z. This is the result. Like all that just goes through the paces, which
Yeah.
has been like Anna's problem all along of like trying to be
Yeah.
free. I think means a couple different things. Like when you talk about like women being free in like contemporary literature today, a lot of the books that reference this, like I only read the description, but like Miranda July's All Fours comes to mind of a woman who like takes off across the country and, you know, does, I don't know, has adventures, let's just say. I don't have any idea, but has like, I think sexual freedom and freedom from the family, freedom from like the responsibility of that. That
Mhm.
seems to be like the idea of freedom is like generally sexual and outside of the family. I think that the freedom that Lessing is talking about and that Anna's working with is partially that, but is also like some other form of freedom that's more metafictional or metaphysical in terms of being boxed in by like narrative structures like politics, communist,
Yeah.
socialist. writer, screenwriter, these things that are like there's another level to it. And I don't think that that's not present, say, in Miranda July's book. I just think that like the way that we just that it's kind of talked about in parlance is like, oh yeah, she's no longer blank and is free to blank. And
Yeah.
this is like this feels like, well, there's no way out. Like she's
Yeah.
stuck in everything.
Which shout out to Marion for quiet quitting her entire family.
Yeah, she's just like, yeah, huh, whatever.
Like
They're good.
speaking of free women, and like she's and I think it's on 491 where Anna's commenting about Marion keeps giggling in this like way that's not that it's unbecoming but unnatural to A, Marion, and B, to someone of her age, I would say. But as much as I have not enjoyed Marion as a character up to this point, now I'm kind of like, you know what? Like I don't support her decision. I mean, I support her decision to leave Richard. I don't support her decision to leave the
How
kids.
old are they though?
Um, I mean, I would imagine they're like Janet-ish's age. Like they're not old
Is
enough
that
to
a
go to
boarding
boarding.
school? Good enough.
Yeah, Janet's 12. She's at a boarding school now. So like I would say a little younger than that. But anyway, that part aside, I mean, she's living like this woman's guilty pleasure is living in a place where everybody knows where she is and just is like, "Oh, I should go back." But like, "Oh, I'm so bad. I haven't gone back yet." And then she's like, "It's fine." Like, go Marion. Like Marion might be the only free woman, or she might be the freest woman in the book to this point, or at this exact point, because yeah, she does have those, even the things that are concerns to her about like, oh, my children, the household. Like she's not actually that concerned. She's kind of like getting a second wind and, getting her groove back in an intellectual sense, even though she's parroting things. But yeah, I'm kind of shipping free woman Marion.
Is it
I'm kind of happy for her.
is it with Marion where she comes back and is like, oh, the thing with Tom Mathong or whatever his name is,
Yeah,
Tom
yeah, yeah.
Mathong, and he's
Yeah.
like, who's that? She's like, the
Yeah.
leader you came to ask you writing the fucking letters to.
Yeah, like
It's like,
literally
right
the
about that, I
thing.
underlined it. It said, "Who is this?" And then it
Yes.
answers it like
Yes.
two sentences later. I was like, "Oh, oh, right.
Yes.
Oh,
Truly,
yep,
it's backwards, but I have his name underlined and then who the
yep,
fuck in the
yep."
But then
Same.
yes, also.
So we leave them off doing that. They're there. Ivor's gone. Her daughter is at the boarding school.
Anna goes to talk to Marion or talks to Marion and Tommy and basically like has an emotional moment and seems like that sort of resets everyone to like, oh, we should really like take a breath and like keep moving forward. But then she's like, I don't know how I did it, but I fixed it, I think. Um, and
Right,
even
right.
I do love, I mean, it is one of my favorite parts on page 500 where afterward Anna's like, I think you guys should talk to Tommy, like reoffer this trip for him and Marion to go do something. Because like whatever is like reset that the emotions that everyone is feeling at that point. And at the top of 500, Molly's like, thanks, Anna. And Richard's like, thanks, Anna. And then Molly laughs and says, back to normal hostilities next time, I'm sure, but it's a pleasure, all this politeness just for once.
And then Richard laughs unwillingly, but it was a laugh. So two things. One, I was gonna say the number of times that they laugh or giggle or chuckle or have a reaction like that in this book is a lot. And
Yeah.
it's very unclear without like really tracking it as like what that means. Like sometimes I don't think that I mean they're not laughing out of humor frequently. It's like a laugh that's signifying something, either like it undercuts themselves or is like, oh yeah, that ha 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 ha. Like there's a
Yeah.
like the way to read like all the laughter in this is something that someone's probably written a paper on or could write a paper on in
Hmm.
terms of like what's being signaled. The other thing is we keep saying Tommy is married. Tommy is not married in Free Women 4.
No,
Tommy Hicks
correct.
is
Yeah.
married in the notebooks later.
Yes.
So
Yes.
again, now the time is I feel like I don't know if it was always this way, but now the notebooks are ahead of the time of free women. It's moved past that
Yes.
moment. I
Yes.
think in the past it was always catching up to. Because like
Hmm.
the Mother Sugar stuff happened in the notebooks, but that had already happened within Free Women. Mally going away for the year had already happened in Free Women, but happens within the context of the notebooks. Like we've been behind, I think, for the most part. Now we are ahead in the notebook,
I
and
agree.
the furthest is the most like closest to contemporary time as possible within this novel at the end of this section. So the notebooks wrap, and the first one's wrap real quickly. So the Black Notebook has a dream about the Mashopi Hotel, and then she closes the notebook and references the idea of like if I were asked by Mother Sugar to name this dream, I would say it's about total sterility. And besides, since I dreamed it, I've been unable to remember how Mary Rose moved her eyes or how Paul laughed. It's all gone. Um,
Hmm.
this will come back, and one thing that I do want to point out now is that dreaming about Paul, this happens again when she starts having her kind of sight, like her breaks with
Yeah.
reality, where she dreams of Paul being dead and entering her body,
Yes.
and becoming, and that being very frightening, and that dream being very unnerving, and like her relationship to like being with other people. Now, the thing that like foreground this, and the because we're gonna jump right through these, is the story in the Bible is that Saul is struck by a beam of light, that Saul is kind of killed and becomes the Apostle Paul. And we do have a Paul here who's
Oh,
dead, and this is
okay.
reverted. So now her main person in her life is Saul Green, like growth, green like anything you want to, green are the pastures, generally like a more whatever thing, but it's reversed, right? Like the like Paul Saul sees the light, becomes godly, as and goes on in that way. That is not the case in here. It's and it is almost like the inversion where Paul, the character from Africa, as described in the Black Notebooks, is nearly angelic in like the way that
Hmm.
he's presented and talked about, and his death is like tragic and sudden,
Yeah.
sort of like being hit by like the bolt of light or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
All my biblical knowledge is lacking, but then
Lacking. I wouldn't have drawn that connection in the first place.
I thought we even mentioned it early on. It's the one that I've been waiting for. Yeah,
Sorry
so
to interrupt. This is amazing. I wouldn't have drawn that connection at all, but yeah, go on, please.
yeah, so okay, so the next book is so that ends the Black Notebook with the stream. The Red Notebook then is the one about the politics and whatnot. Um, it's very weird. So what she has in the Red Notebook is newspaper clippings for 56 and 57. So I think we're past that at the end of the last notebook, but the blue one. But the about Europe, Soviet Union, China, United States, and she underlines the word freedom whenever it recurs in red pencil. Where the cutting ceased, she had added up the red lines, making a total of 679 references to the word freedom. And then she writes a thing underneath that about a guy who like believes that he's going to help change Harry Matthews, spelled the same way as the author Harry Matthews.
Yeah,
So
that tripped me up for a
irony upon
second.
irony. I was like, whoa.
I was like, I almost Googled that, but I was like, I don't think there's any fucking way.
No, I mean, but Harry Matthews, the author, was maybe part of CIA, and there's a book called My Life in CIA about his, he was never, he was never part of the CIA because nothing suspicious about his life or anything. Get that if you want to look for it. So that goes that section is basically like this guy Harry goes to like gets to go to the Soviet Union is like, listen, let me explain to you to this poor like probably very, very young, like tour leader, this young woman, and he's like, here's the deal. And she's basically like falls asleep on him.
So tired.
And
Poor child.
his whole like life's mission of I can make this work is like, nah, boy, you're not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Like, what are you doing? All of this is a waste.
And
All
then
of
she,
your words, all of your attempts to like explain how things should be, everything that you put all this thought and effort into, it's not going to make a lick of difference in the end.
no. And then is it Jimmy who
Yeah,
she's talking?
Jimmy.
Is that the one who worked at the
From
publishing house?
no, isn't Jimmy one of the characters from Africa who's the one who's always around in Africa when they're playing the music? He's one of the people who's part of that scene. initially. There is a character named Jimmy that's part of that scene.
And
Is it
so,
Jimmy? I don't
yeah.
know. Yeah,
Okay,
because
so that's
Jimmy
what
and
I
Paul are good friends. If you go to like page 92, 93.
yeah, that's what I couldn't remember because he's not been around. And then all of a sudden it was like I talked to Jimmy again. I was like,
Yeah.
where did he come from?
And Jimmy,
I thought it was the guy at the publishing house who was like
I don't think
the editor.
I think it's this one because it would make sense. It
Okay.
connects up with Paul. It also like he was a communist, so like
Yeah.
him talking about the Communist Party, this all kind of makes sense for that.
Yes.
I could be misremembering. All these names are wrapped together into one thing.
Hmm.
Then she goes into the Yellow Notebook, and this I think is interesting. So the Yellow Notebook was the novel forever, right? And
Hmm.
and she kind of has given up on the novel and instead has like a bunch of possibilities, like from Frazan's Invented Part has a whole section in which the authors or the writer is like envisioning all these things that they're never going to write because they're no longer their next writer.
Hmm.
She's envisioning all these different short stories, all of which are mainly like this is kind of the fractal nature of this book, where they're all kind
Yeah.
of the same, just retold, and it's the same, bigger or smaller, the same pattern, all of that like kind of adding up. However, some of these then become part of the next notebook. Some of these stories are then repeated in the next notebook. There's also a number of sections in here in which she's like, this belongs in the other notebook. This belongs over here. Like the phrase, "What do you mean permissive? I'm not your keeper. Don't turn me into an American woman." That, "Well, aren't you permissive?" shows up in the blue notebook later, in which tells that to her, as like
Right. So
so
the
like, and then
timeline is a little.
he has a journal, a diary that she reads, and she's like, "Oh, I know you did this." He's like, "Haha, you don't fucking know anything." And there's a story in here where it's like, what if these two people each keep a fake journal that they know the other one is reading with fake details, and then have a real one that's hidden? When you reference the real one, they know that you violated the terms of this and aren't reading like the fake notebooks anymore. I thought Saul's notebook might be fake. All of these things keep kind of coming up over and over.
Yeah. So which one do you think came first, the interaction with Saul or these like short story ideas, let's call
I
them?
don't know that there's a way to tell, and I don't know that
Oh,
I.
but wait. No, there should be a way. Okay, so these are all no, that but it should be because there's the because they're numbered. So it's like asterisk one a short story and then it goes back and then in that longer section that's where it has the asterisks and the numbers again.
Oh shit.
So page like I realized that it had the two but I didn't put it together. So 508 star 1 asterisk a short story goes to 526.
Yep.
And she says, so I said something about myself, and so he spoke of me, and that is a woman starved for love meets a man rather younger than herself, younger perhaps in emotional experience than in years, or perhaps in the depth of his emotional experience. She deludes herself about the nature of the man, for him, another love affair merely. Oh fuck, I would have to reread this.
Oh shit. And I think there are 19 asterisks in that section. Because I was
Yeah.
like, why is there this number? What does this possibly mean? I'm gonna find it. I think you're
So
right.
that's why,
It
yeah,
would match up with all those. So like,
the
where was
middle of 526 does say in the brackets, from this point on in the diary or chronicle, Anna had marked certain points in it with asterisks and numbered the asterisks, and that does go back to these short stories.
yeah. Again, like, yeah, this comment should be here. Short novel or The Man Who Is Free of Women, which is similar to our guy Saul. Here.
Hmm. And that's this short story
Yeah,
number
so
six is
14
the
is the one
one.
about the two different journals.
Yes.
So let me see if I can find 14 real quick. Where the
19 is the one that was like, again, Doris Lessing does not paint Americans in a good light at all. Where it's the three guys like walking down a little drunk and like punching each other and being like, I love you, buddy, uppercut. You're my best friend. Kick to the groin.
So here's the thing. So 14 in page 514, a short novel. Men and women married or in a long relationship secretly read each other's diaries in which their thoughts about each other are recorded with the utmost frankness. Both know that reading the other is what she writes, but for a while objectivity is maintained. Then slowly they begin writing falsely, first unconsciously, then consciously, so as to influence the other. The position is reached where each keeps two diaries, one for private use and locked up, the second for the other to read. Fast forward to page 545. She's in his room. Then I found the stacks of diaries. 14, I remember thinking it was odd that his diaries ran chronologically, not all split up like mine are. I leafed through some of the earlier ones, not reading them, but getting an impression, an unending list of new places, different jobs, an endless list of girls' names. There's a thread through the diversity of place names, women's names, details of loneliness, detachment, isolation. Then I remembered that when I read my notebooks, I didn't recognize myself. Something strange happens when one writes about oneself. That is, oneself direct, not oneself projected. The result is cold, pitiless, judging. Or if not judging, then there's no life in it. Yes, that's it. It's lifeless. That does seem to go back to this 14. That I did not realize that until we are live on this podcast. Literally.
I so I remembered
I'm all
that
fucked up.
I remembered that those were numbered, and I do remember, like I said, on page four, oh sorry, five 26, where it had that aside saying from this point on in diary or in the diary or chronicle, and I had marked certain points in it with asterisks, and I kept thinking, I kept waiting for endnotes to those as opposed to
Uh,
jumping like they're like four notes, Cree notes.
yeah.
Um, damn, dude.
So yeah, so that could be a whole one go back through all of that. And it doesn't I mean they don't directly relate, but they do seem like, they go off of that. They're like that
Yeah.
divide, looking at two things, seeing the parallax of it all or whatever you want to say.
Hmm.
So Saul, so who is Saul? Saul is an American who has come that initially Molly's like, yo, do not get involved with this guy. He's, an American touring, traveling, whatever, so on and so forth. But he's looking for a place to stay. He knows of Anna's place. She's gonna allow him to stay there. He is she's smitten with him pretty early on because of the way he stands, like a seemingly like someone out of the Marlboro
Oh
advertising
yeah, I was gonna say
circuit
that or like Levi
1962.
Strauss ad, denim jean ad, blue
Those
jean
are the
boy.
same ad. I think those are the same exact ad. But that he stands a certain way, and she's like, "Oh, yep, I would do that." And then there's like this kind of thing where there's a friend of Molly and Anna's that has a crush on him, and he's like sneaks out to see her. He spends a day with her when he's supposed to come to Anna's to get the room. There's like this sort of level of like, where are you really going? And then they do get involved. They have a lot of like friendship at first. They spend all night talking, they discuss all these different things, then they're banging, and then that becomes very complicated when she finds in the journal that she's like, one of the worst lays I've ever had. She's awful. I don't like sleeping with her, but I like her all the time. Then he keeps going out, and she's like, "You're going out to fuck other people," and he's like, "Don't ask me, and I won't lie to you," sort of vibe. And that causes her some consternation, the fact that she's stressed about it. There's a great line actually related to that I'm going to jump ahead to. That's on page 571. Don't you think it's extraordinary that we are both people whose personalities, whatever that word may mean, are large enough to include all sorts of things, politics and literature and art, but now that we're mad, everything concentrates down to one small thing, that I don't want you to go off and sleep with someone else and that you must lie to me about it. And that is more or less their relationship. Like he is very, like, in terms of like categorizing a male and describing the male figure or male like gaze and whatnot, is very interesting because suddenly it's very bald. He's like, I'm a hypocrite. I think I realize that I want women to be second class because it makes my life better. So like, go make me coffee. And she's like, that's a decent enough role. I'll make your coffee. Like he's very blunt in that way. He wants to fuck all these women. He's very like sort of open about that, and
Hmm.
and he's also like a dick, but like an honest dick.
Yeah, and she frequently, I think this is the most real conversation she's had with anybody in the book so far. I mean, her conversations with Molly are pretty, you know, like just superficial. They talk about people, they gossip, they talk about relationships. But, she and Anna and Saul talk about politics. They don't agree about monogamy, or not monogamy so much, because she does say that she's like, I don't care who you sleep with. It's the like the smoke and mirrors of it all,
That's sort of the
the
line.
lying. But I mean, they talk constantly, and even she, um, the first part, like when he first kind of moves in with her or comes to stay with her, I thought it initially was quite awkward, and I saw myself in it where she's just like, she's watching him and he's sort of talking about stuff and she interrupts him and she's like, "Why are your clothes too big for you?"
Yeah, yeah,
And then she's like, "Are you sick with something?" Just like catches him off guard because I don't know, she seems I think Anna seems freer in certain ways in this section because she's just asking these questions. She's not holding, she's leaving, she's left her filter somewhere else. She's removed her filter. Um, and or else it's just the first time that we're seeing this sort of interaction. But if she has a problem with him, I feel like for 80% of the times where she's had something where she'll think to herself, why is he doing this? She'll then out loud say, "Why are you doing this?" Instead of just obsessing over it or writing it down or sitting in her room. And she does eventually do that. But she seems really ready to just, yeah, okay. She seems freer in this section where she's just free to be like, "What are you fucking doing? Like, I know you're going out, or I think I know you're going out and sleeping with other women, or um, you know, then he comes back right after she says, "Why are your clothes so big?" And he comes back in different clothes, and she's just like, "Did you go buy new clothes just because I said that stuff?" Like she's very straightforward with him.
yeah. Yeah. I don't know if this is taking it a different way, but another thing that I want to say with it is that in terms of that straightforwardness and his straightforwardness is that the depiction of like men and how men act with him is weird and complicated in the sense that one of the things she keeps coming back to is that everything he says is I constantly like I this, I
Mhm.
this, I this, I this, I this. I have this, I have this. And there's like a great part where she's talking about this early on in like 534 and she's like uh they're talking about their sexual things and she's being very direct about this. So based on what you're saying, whenever you
Yeah.
talk about sex or love, you say he got laid, I got laid, they got laid, males. He gave an abrupt laugh but not comprehending. So I said, always in the passive. He said, quick, what do you mean? She's like, it gives me the most extraordinary uneasy feeling listening to you. Surely I get laid, she gets laid, they female get laid, but surely you as a man don't get laid, you lay. And they're like having
Yeah.
like this discussion. And then she's like, "You make me feel like a hick." And she says, "Well,
Yeah.
the other day you were talking about how you fought with your American friends about the way language degraded sex. You described yourself as the original Puritan, Saul Galahad. I'm not sure how you say it, Galahad, to the defense, like the sir, like the knight, the whatnot. You described yourself as Sir Galahad to the defense, but you talk about getting laid. You never say a woman. You say a broad, a lay, a baby, a doll, a bird. You talk about butts and boobs. Every time you mention a woman, I see her either as a sort of window dresser's dummy or as a heap of dismembered parts, breasts or legs or buttocks. I was angry, of course. And he goes on, and she goes on, I suppose that's what you'd call being a square, but I'm damned if I see how a man can have a healthy attitude to sex if he can't talk about anything but butts and babies being stacked or packed and so on and so on. No wonder the bloody Americans are all in trouble with their bloody sex lives. And then his response is
Yeah,
exactly so
Anna.
she's being very direct. She's saying, like, isn't this crazy? Also looking at the language, she's a writer. This is very like within that, how do you get you're as a woman are this, you are butt, you are boobs, you are
You
this,
are a butt. You are
whatever.
boobs.
And his response, she says all that directly, all within that. And his response is, it's the first time in my life I've been accused of being anti-feminist. It interests you to know that I'm the only American male I know who doesn't accuse American women of all the sexual sins in the calendar. Do you imagine I don't know that men blame women for their inadequacies? And it immediately becomes the I-centered part again. Um,
Yeah.
versus like the systematic here, like you talk about, you use these words, and this is like your very fundamental thing you say is I got laid, and that's not right because you would be doing the laying in this situation. So everything that you're using in this language is crazy in this contraption. Is like I don't do. I'm the one. I'm a feminist. I'm this, and it's so perfect for nailing that specific dynamic, and it comes up over and over again in this section where it just keeps illustrating her talk about like something like broader of societal of these of the nature of these traps and these boxes and whatnot. And he immediately was like, I this, I need to get out, I need to do this. It's wildly specific.
Yeah.
And she breaks down. He, like you said, like there's parts in here where he's like, he's a different character. He puts on his southern voice, he puts on this voice, he comes off this way. He does things in these like different characters that he's playing, different roles, different masks that he's putting on, which
Mhm.
goes back to our Jungian thing, Hero with a Thousand Faces, all the different masks
Confidence
put
man.
on their confidence man, all those things that are part of that. She then is continually breaking apart. She's having
Yeah.
the dreams out being inhabited by the dead, by dead Paul. She's like, keeps saying like I sit like there's times where it's like she seems paralyzed. Like she describes
Yeah.
Anna in the third person as not moving from her bed. It's
Night
all like
terrors.
totally fucked up. Like I have it specifically marked on 561 and 562. It's like I found I was lying on the floor, unable to breathe because of the tension in my stomach. Like I found I was lying on the floor is passive and is that like she's not aware of that self.
Mhm.
Goes on, I went back to my room. I was desperately ashamed being locked in Anna's, unimportant little animal's terrors. So then Anna is that third person and is not her, but she's
Yeah.
trapped within Anna's terrors. Then the feeling of banality, the disgust of banality mingled with my fear. And then suddenly I moved forward in a new knowledge, a new understanding. And this knowledge came out of Anna's, the frightened little animals sitting on the floor, cowering. So she's like, there's a real break going on here.
Yeah.
And like this, we could go through a bunch of these, but like his thing is constantly I. My question to you is he real?
Yes.
Okay.
Because Molly, I mean,
In
I
the
guess all
notebook.
phone calls, I suppose. So like that's fair.
In the
Um,
notebook.
yeah, in the notebook, but also, yeah, she's never, well, no, when she and Molly, I was gonna say, if everything's internal to the apartment, but she goes out to dinner with Molly once, and do they talk about him or do they avoid the subject? I
I'm
don't
not
actually
sure,
remember.
but it could be that not even that he's not real or this is some sort of bullshit like Fight Club thing. But I
Oh, yeah, no. No,
but
I love it. Like,
it is representative of like seemingly like the male part of her being. This is how she sees men as both like as that centered thing, as sort of hypocritical. And when they're honest, like this would also fit within like that sort of psychotherapy of the time of that this is just another aspect of herself, and that through psychoanalysis, Jungian or Freudian, you have to integrate and become whole. And this would be integrating that male perspective with her female perspective, which is being represented through the Golden Notebook. Because the Golden Notebook, which she buys, because some American had like commissioned it, but then didn't show up and had left his
yeah,
deposit. So it was quote unquote sort of affordable, high end of affordable. So she buys it. Saul tries to take it. She's like, no, this is my notebook. I'm going to write in it. And instead, he writes a poem in it that's basically like, this is my book. So then the Golden Notebook could be the bringing together of these two things, whether he's real or not, or if he's like a character, but she's projecting her idea, her internal male being on top of him would be that
yeah.
potential.
Um, 1 second. Uh, when was the yellow wallpaper written?
Before.
Okay, okay, okay. So that could be, oh yeah, geez, 1892. That could be a little I mean it's not golden wallpaper, a little yellow wallpaper moment too. Like
That, yeah.
I do love throwing a wrench into a book club conversation of like, are these people just insane? Are they just imagining everything? I do love that. So I'm on board
Jacob's
with that
ladder.
possibility. Yeah, Jacob's Ladder as well. Yeah, and the little poem he writes, and she even says old schoolboy's curse. So he's acting a child.
Hmm.
Um, and she does say a couple times to him, like, you're looking for like, oh, where she tells him, she's like, basically like, it's not my fault you have mommy problems, like mother
Yeah,
issues.
and all
Um,
Americans have mother issues. That part is great.
and there's like you were talking about the societal, she'll bring up a lot of things of like, oh, like American this, American that, but the number of times that he says like freaking English women, like you're all like you're, I think doesn't even once also tell her, he's like, you're the most English woman I've ever met.
Yep.
So that clash of, I mean, it's not even a culture clash, but that's like it is a culture clash, I guess, of in terms of relationships and emotions. So it was a very entertaining 100 pages and a very anxious 100 pages. Um,
So-
and I hope I have the energy and the time to, I think I will, to go back and read the asterisks along with, to flip back and forth and see that. Um,
Yeah, how those kind of like fold into each other. I can't believe we did not even realize that. That's such a good catch and like so so clear, like that makes sense. Yeah, I just keep finding everything that I underline as I flip through this are those parts where she's breaking apart entirely.
yeah.
In a month, Janet will be home and this Anna will cease to exist. Um, the where is it? Under today's date, I'm a prisoner. I'm slowly going mad with frustration. That's him writing that one. But she's like, I was desperately ashamed being locked in Anna's important little animals terror. I said that one. They just keep popping up here. Is like it does seem like this true like loss of everything. And then the part that bounces off of is this one where she says like, okay, so that was 3 days ago. I think this is where they don't have sex. These last 3 days I've been inside madness. When he came downstairs, he looked very ill. His eyes were sharp, bright, wary animals inside circles of brownish, bruised flesh. His mouth was tight, like a weapon. All his different personalities were fused in the being who fought only for survival. He gave me repeated glances of appeal for which he was not aware. Goes on. He drank coffee and began talking about politics, glancing at the pile of papers. This was compulsive talking, not the I talking of his triumphant accusation and defiance of the world, but talking to hold himself together. He
Mhm.
talked, his eyes not implicated with what he was saying. And so there are two attempts at like staying together. She's not. She's like kind of just falling apart. And he's using this other form of language. The I one is detrimental, is egotistical, is problematic. Her dissolution is problematic. He's trying to find another pathway, perhaps, or she is too, of being able to create something that holds you together, a narrative that holds you together. And like
Yeah.
part of her problem within this of like her falling apart is she's like, well, I can't write another. I have writer's block. I haven't told anyone I have writer's block. I've got nothing.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that we're reading a many 100 page long book of shit that she's written theoretically, the fact that she's not writing a novel, she says is writer's block, and that could also be used within like this narrative framework that I'm imposing of like trying to find the way to make your description of who you are that is free, that you're making on your own accord, that is like that
Yeah.
is brings you together to a whole. And she's just like writing in four notebooks and like underlining in black lines and like putting in like these stories that don't then connect to that notebook. And like
Yeah.
it's all super chaotic. And there is no like singular who is Anna narrative, which is the thing I was saying last week. Like, I don't know who this woman is in the end. Like,
Yeah.
there's all these components.
Which Anna are you going to be today?
Yeah, which she essentially says in this.
Yeah, which I mean when you say is Saul real, I mean you could go so far as like is Molly real? Is Richard, like, are each
Yeah.
of them just an Anna?
Is this just a novel?
Yeah.
I
Oh
think
no,
we're
no.
not like really
Take
taking
it back.
putting something into or no, it's just the whole thing's a novel, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so
No,
anyways, so
it's very fun. It's incredibly fun. I wish Brian had been on here because I'm curious. Like, I was, I didn't realize that. Like, going back to the asterisks, like I was aware of them, but I didn't realize that I was looking in the wrong direction for where those would lead to. And you said you didn't realize that. I wonder if Brian cottoned onto it. I'm gonna keep saying that, cottoned. If Brian was aware of it, or if Brian would have been same as us, like, oh shit. We missed a pretty big cue.
I'll ask him. We'll ask him. We could
Yeah.
ask him. You could text him right now as I do this outro and we can see if he responds.
Yeah.
I've got nothing else to add from this section, so we will finish this book next week. Which great. There's like not that many pages left, and we have hit a point where it feels like it is very much like this is it. This is it.
Yeah.
This is as far as you could go under this circumstance. Now we do need the golden notebook. Otherwise, there's not another iteration left. Yeah. Oh, he does also constantly. She's always asking him to go to a therapist, and he's like, "No, fuck you. I'm not going to a fucking therapist." Like,
Then she finally calls it. She's like a witch doctor. And
witch doctor. Yeah, it's like witch doctor right on. So, anyways, if you're listening, you can rate and review us on YouTube or on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. It does help a lot. And like I said, we'll be going through the end of it for next week. My favorite line, I'll go while you text, is on 571, and this ties into everything else that we've been saying. Uh, he comes in on her while she's putting away notebooks. She says, "Why do you have four notebooks?" I said, "Obviously, because it's been necessary to split myself up. But from now on, I shall be using one only," which I thought was just kind of a good summary of all of that. That line I really particularly I like that. I like the one about the thing where we all like we can have these broad personalities that can talk about all these things, but then when we're mad, then it becomes about the sex and the lies, which very interesting. So, do you have a favorite line from this?
yes, I sort of read a couple of them, but the one um
Good radio.
super good radio. Sorry, you can switch. Okay, so
I'll keep rolling here. Oh yeah, here's another like, but Anna was not there. Then I fell asleep, though I knew as I drifted off, this was not an ordinary sleep. I could see Anna's body lying on the bed, and into the room, one after another, came people I knew who stood at the foot of the bed and seemed to try and fit themselves into Anna's body. Like all this dissociated stuff, like when it's super obvious, but like there's a lot of it in this section. Like this is a very cloaked idea of like someone having like a true mental breakdown. Like
Mhm.
it doesn't seem as extreme as I think it actually would be in real life, having this going on. Okay, go on. What you
Okay,
got?
so mine, page 549, at the top, it is while Anna and Saul are. Oh, Anna says, I remarked that there were different schools in lovemaking, and we came from two different schools. We were hating each other, but all this was quite good-humored, for he began thinking about it, and then he roared with laughter. Love, he said, sentimental as a schoolboy, is international. Screwing, I said, is a matter of national styles. No Englishman would make love like you. I am referring, of course, to the ones that do make love. And he began making up a pop song, and this is my line of the week is I'll like your national style if you'll like mine.
Amazing. Back next week, more national styles, some goal.
And yes, and possibly a Golden Notebook Doris Lessing t-shirt idea.
Yeah, some new merch, some new
Workshopping.
oblique merchandise for you, and hopefully I'll be stuffed full,
Very oblique.
and I'll be stuffed full of pierogi.